In this video, we're going to go over the process of setting up the QuestMap Pro widget elements to work in your own HUD. So in the tutorial project so far, we've been using the example HUD. So that's the one that includes this, and we've got our world map, mini map, and compass. If we wanted to implement this into our own HUD, that's a pretty easy process. We've got a very basic HUD set up on the character. Ignore that. We just have the quest dialog as well as the counter for chess. So we can actually add quest map systems to this HUD and disable the example HUD. So let's go about doing that. Let's jump into our controller and disable the example HUD. To do that, we go to QuestMap Pro's manager and we just disable this use example UI. Hit compile, and then what we want to do is we want to jump into our interface functions here and click on Get Parent Widget. Now, if you do not have these three, you need to go through the integration process. During the integration process, we add an interface that adds these, so you need to do that. We need a reference to our HUD, so we'll just drag that over here and plug that in there. This is just a generic widget, so as long as it's any UMG widget, you'll be fine. If you do not have a reference to your own HUD, then what you want to do is find where you create your HUD, which will usually be on event begin play. It'll have this create HUD widget. Create widget. So it normally looks like this until you tell it what HUD to use. And just drag off of the return value and promote to variable. That's how you get a reference to your HUD. Once we've done that, we can actually close out our controller and we just want to move into our actual HUD widget now. Now we're looking to add three elements here. So we're going to add the world map. Going to add a second version of the world map that we'll use for the mini map. And then we also want to add the compass. So sorry, this one is W QuestMap Pro Compass, and this one is W QuestMap Pro World Map. Same with that one. Once they are in, we'll start with the compass. We're going to mimic the example UI here, and we'll look at customizing it afterwards. So for the compass, we're going to put that in the middle top. We're going to set the X position to 0, set the Y position to 20, so it's just a little bit away from the screen. And we're going to set the alignment for the X value only to 0.5. Now, if you want to resize this HUD, take a look at the controller settings for the compass. You have some options such as, where are we? Your padding and that sort of thing. That can be used to change how much room at the edge there is here. But ultimately, if you want to completely resize the HUD, you would just put that inside a size box, which is what we're going to do here. So you just do the same process as we're about to do for the world map. That is our compass setup otherwise. We want to click on the world map we're using for the world map, and we want to tell it to be in the center of the screen. So we're going to use the anchor center of screen. We're going to set the position X and Y both to 0. And we're going to use the alignment 0.5 for both X and Y. We're going to make sure size to content is disabled, and we'll set the Z order to something like 10. Now that that's all set up, if we wrap this with a size box, the size box should automatically inherit all those settings. Yep, it does. And we just want to turn on width override, height override, max desired width, and max desired height. Now, strictly speaking, you should be able to get away without doing these, but Unreal Engine can be a little bit finicky sometimes with UMG. So I would recommend enabling these and just setting them to the same value you use up here. That just ensures that this size box is never going to end up bigger than this value. If you want your world map to be smaller, it's pretty straightforward. You just resize these. And if you want to work with rectangles, you can do that as well. And we will go through that process in a second. But for now, I'm just going to leave these on 800. And we're just going to click on this world map here, and we're going to make sure that is minimap is set to disabled. These two settings, ignore those. For now, I would recommend if you want to work with a non-square shape one or using non-standard UMG practices, taking a look at the documentation, it will explain these settings. Now we're going to rename this one just to world map so we know this is definitely our world map. And just for cleanliness, I'm going to rename this size box to world map size box. For the mini map, we want to do a similar process. So we're going to put our mini map down the bottom right corner. We're going to set our position X and Y to 0. We're going to set our size to much smaller. Something like 300 works pretty well for mini-maps. For the alignment, we're going to set that to 1 and 1. That way our anchor is at the bottom right of the mini-map. We're going to set the Z order again to something like 10, and we just want to, in this setup, make sure is mini-map is set to true. I'm going to also pull this away from the edge of the... Oops. -50 and -50. That just pulls it away from the edge of the screen. And once again, I'm just going to wrap this with a size box, which should inherit all those settings. Yep, it has done. And I'm just going to do the same thing again and set these all to the same setting that we have. We're going to rename the minimap widget to minimap and call the size box minimap size box. Not absolutely necessary, but is going to be much more useful in a more complex HUD. And that is all our widgets set up now. So if we hit compile and we head over to the graph, we need to add one interface. So click on class settings and just look for this interface sections. In normal blueprints, it will be over on the right side. But in the UMG editor, it's over here. So we want to click add and we just type in parent UI. We want to add bpint quest map pro parent UI. Hit compile and you should see a category here with 3 functions in it. If we open up them one by one, oops, I didn't rename our compass. Let's do that quickly. Call that compass. Head back over to the graph. So for get minimap widget, which is the first one of these, we want to just give it a reference to the minimap widget. For get world map widget, we want to give it a reference to the world map widget. And for get compass, as you may have guessed, we're giving it a reference to our compass widget. If we hit compile, save that, and close both of these up, we hit play. We've got everything working, but as you may have seen, the compass there began not working. So we can fix that by jumping back into our HUD and just setting the default visibility for our world map, our mini map, and our compass to hidden. That way everything is in the state that quest map is expecting it to be in. And you'll see now they fade in based on the settings on the controller. So we have everything up and running, and it all works as intended. So that's everything you need to do to get it up and running in your own HUD. There are some additional things we can do here, and we're going to just demonstrate that, you know, we can do some things like move this over here. We could have our mini map at the top if we wanted. Oops. Because this was one of the weaknesses of Quest Map Classic, was that stuff couldn't be moved around very easily. So I'm just going to do some frankly silly things. We're just going to set it up like this, and we're even going to make our world map into something more like that. So we have a rectangular map that is actually much higher than it is wide, and we're going to display it on a world map that is wider than it is high. Again, this is obviously not how you would want to do things, but this is just to demonstrate that things can go wherever you want and be whatever shape you like. So our compass is now down the bottom, our mini map's at the top right, and if we hit map, we've got our map here. And this might actually be useful in some scenarios where you want players to often have a map up. I can't imagine it would be super good, but yeah, so you can do that however you like. Now there is one final thing that I just want to demonstrate, and that is that we can change the default rendering of the map within this world map. So what I mean by that is when I hit map, you can see our map is the same width of the actual map widget. That is ideal for a 1.0 zoom, which is what we're starting on here. But because our map is actually taller, QuestMap is going to automatically try and render it to that size. If we wanted it to be bigger than that, we can actually jump into our blueprint, our controller blueprint, and we can change on the map component, we can change the map width here to something more like 1200. And that will mean that the map is rendered bigger than the actual map by default at 1.0. So it just gives you a bit of control over that. It's never going to let you make it smaller than this. So if our widget is 600 wide, if we try and, sorry, our widget is 800 wide. If we try and set this to something like 300, QuestMap is going to ensure, I'm getting an error right now, it's going to ensure that this is scaled up to the right size. Now I'm going to get an error because I hit M before everything had fired up there. If you get those, essentially what that is if you're, I don't know if you guys saw here when I hit play, the mouse is free for a moment. That's because in my controller I have not got something set up to bind that. So I'll show you how to do that quickly. Set input mode game and UI. And you just want to set the player controller to self and lock on capture. That should fix that, I believe. Yep, there we go. Now we don't have a mouse, so we won't get that error anymore. So anyway, what I was trying to say is the system will never let the map be smaller than the border, and that's to ensure there's no weird graphical artifacts. But we can use it to stretch it wider if so desired. You can also use that in conjunction with rectangular settings to make your world map display how you want, but I'll leave that all for you guys to play around with. That's how you set up QuestMap Pro in your own HUD. If you have any questions regarding this process, please feel free to jump into the Discord or reach out via email. If you have any feedback, same thing. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and enjoy working with QuestMap.